So I'm going to talk a little bit about the chunk strum, which is a really useful thing for ukulele players. You've heard it before. It's kind of ubiquitous. So when you hear that sort of snare drum chunk sound, that's the chunk right there. What you're actually hearing is two motions happening really close together that's giving it that sound. The first is a strum. And what I like to do is I like to use these two fingers, my middle and ring fingers of my strumming hand. And I'm not going to hold them separate and strum like that, but what I am going to do is try to focus where my hand hits on those two fingers. So I'm still holding my hand kind of relaxed, but this is the part that's really hitting the strings. So when I strum, you can see that I'm strumming with those two fingers, but it kind of looks like I'm strumming with my whole hand. It looks like 4 fingers are really strumming down. But what this does is it gets my hand going in the right direction to line up the mute, which I'm going to mute with the kind of the meaty part of my thumb, or like, people mute with different places, but you can experiment with different parts of your hand. But basically, as soon as I finish strumming, I'm going to stop the strings with the meaty part of the palm of my hand. So what I end up with is a strum and then a stop. Strum, stop, strum, stop. And when I do those things really close together, the strum stop turns into a chunk. Strum stop, strum stop. So you hear the strum just for like a split second, just a hair of a second before you stop it. And when you work this into a strumming pattern, like if I just do a down strum and then a chunk, it sounds pretty good already. It's already like pretty percussive. Down, chunk, down, chunk. So your chunk basically happens in the same place that a down strum would happen. It's hard to chunk up, but you can always chunk down. So anywhere where you would strum down is a good place to chunk. You could also try down, chunk, up, chunk, down, chunk, up, chunk. Or you could do down, chunk, up, chunk, up, down, chunk, up, down, up, chunk, up. And so the only difference between those two last ones that I did, one was just down, chunk, up, chunk. The other, I added an up strum at the end. Down, chunk, up, chunk, up. And those sound pretty good when you link the two together, kind of alternate. Down, chunk, up, chunk. Down, chunk, up, chunk, up, down, chunk. So try those out and see how it feels. I think if you try to keep your wrists relaxed, try to keep your hand from getting too stiff. The chunk is really achievable. Just stick with it, and you'll start to hear that chunk sound. Especially if you focus really hard on doing the strum and then the stop, and kind of like closing the gap between those two things. I wrote out a little chord progression. It's like a 12-bar blues, a chunky 12-bar blues. So it goes C, 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 F, F, C, C, G7, F, C, C. And each of those chords gets 4 beats. And I'll just play through it, and you can play along if you get a chance to write that down, or if you've got that on the handout from our ukulele class. So that's kind of how that sounds. It's a good sequence to play through as you're kind of working on your chunk strum.